To our judges, Susan Lang from Calsask, Kevin Miller from Mel Thompson, and Larry Hiles from Tech Canada. Thank you to our Speaker of the House, Brad Lillick. The format will be as follows. Prime Minister, 5 minutes. 4 constructive speeches, 7 minutes each. Leader of the Opposition will have 5-minute speech, plus 2-minute rebuttal. Prime Minister, 2-minute rebuttal. I will show time cards at various intervals to indicate the remaining time at each minute. At the final 30 seconds, and at the final 10 seconds. Your time is up when the red card is shown. I will stop any speaker who exceeds the maximum time limit. A knock on the table like this will indicate the end or beginning of protected time. No questions, comments, cell phones, or picture taking will be permitted from the audience. Heckling is not allowed in the competition. This includes participants and audience members. The audience will only be permitted to applaud at the end of the debate. Immediately following the presentation, viewers and delegates must leave the presentation room for judges' discussion. At this time, I'll hand things over to the Speaker of the House to open the floor.
I now call this House to order. Welcome to round 1 of the 2014 JDC West debate competition. The resolution before the House is, be it resolved that cosmetic companies be prohibited from using Photoshop in advertisements. On side government is Team K, and side opposition, Team L. I remind the gallery and the members that there is absolutely no heckling or applause permitted during the round. The gallery may applaud the members once the entire debate has concluded. I now call upon the Prime Minister, who shall speak for a total of 5 minutes, the first of which will be protected time as well as the last.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for giving me the floor. And before I really want to get down to the nitty-gritty, the dirty work, the depth, or the very big ideas we want to argue about today, I would like to structure the debate. Box it out first with the definitions. We want to define prohibited as banned, Photoshop as cosmetic alterations to photos or any type of media to human beings in advertisement. And advertisement will be defined as any paid-for media, any form, with the expressed purpose of selling a product from a company. Very basic definitions there for you. And so with that out of the way, with the boring stuff out of the way, let's get into why we as side government believe it is utmost important and the job of government itself to protect the people, and why this topic links directly into that idea, the fundamental idea of why we as a government sit here and have power. We break it down into 3 pillars to make it more, or make it easier for all of us to understand what we're trying to say. The first of which will be influence on society. Second, ethics of advertising. And third, responsibilities of government in business ethics. I will talk about the first, partners will talk about last 2 respectively. Let's get right into it. Let's talk about influence on society. Let's ask the broad question, I guess. Where are we headed? Where are we going? And where do we see ourselves? And where do we want to go as a country 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now? Effects on society, or influence on society from cosmetic Photoshop advertisements? Well, we don't really have to metaphorically ask this question. We can look across the pond, as you will, across the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic in this sense, to Korea and Japan. I use them as they're analogous to Canada, as they're very similar to us, as they're materialistic societies, post-democratic, developed nations. I use them as analogous to Canada in the future, essentially. And we look at their cosmetic industry, and we don't have to really dig deep into the industry to really see its effects and its shifts along the fault lines of their culture. We see them in the photos that we see on the internet, the way they do their V-face, as they say. We as the West see them as them being very cute or trying to be cute, but in reality they're doing it to hide their genetically higher cheekbones because they believe they're not beautiful. They believe that themselves aren't beautiful, and they use their hand motions and pictures to hide their cheekbones. And that, in a sense, is one of the first ways that the cosmetic industry has shifted the very fault lines of how they see themselves. A second is their skin color. BB cream is one of the most prevalent exports of cosmetic industry from Korea. It's great. It covers up a lot of your complexion faults, but the problem is it also lightens your skin. They believe a paler inflection to their skin is more beautiful. It's more attractive, more westernized, more attractive. But there's another problem. They're genetically darker. The Korean genes have them as a darker shade as they live along the oceans. Their skin have been developed darker to protect them from the salt. So they're genetically darker. And that in itself is the shift in society that we see today. And how is this really incurred by Photoshop, by Photoshop in advertisements? Well, the fundamental idea of Photoshop in advertisements is to make the perfection sellable. It's to take the idea of perfection, take the idea of a lighter skin color, of more smooth cheekbones, and make it easier to sell to you. Let's say I'm an advertiser, I want a model. The model doesn't have necessarily the cheekbones. That's fine, I'll shape it down with Photoshop. And bam, every model suddenly on every cover of every magazine has sharp cheekbones. Suddenly, we're coming out with a cream that lightens your skin. Bam, every model on every cover, every advertisement is lighter skin. So you as the consumer sit here, look at these models, look at these beautiful women and beautiful men in some cases, and look at their bodies and say, I want to be like them. I want to buy those products, I want to be like them. And eventually, you have what's happening back to Korea today. You have the prevalence of changing yourself, of changing yourself to become an impossible shape, an impossible beauty that is unattainable by no one, that is unattainable by everyone, essentially. So we have a clash between who we want to be and who we are on the most fundamental level, on the level that we can never gap the clothes, on a level where it is created by an industry that is both lying to itself, lying to its consumers, and lying to everybody involved in the sale of these products. They're lying about the image they can produce, and they're lying about every step of the way, all the way to the consumer. And I've talked about big ideas, a lot of analogies and such things, and I want to bring it back to a very simple idea. In advertising, in any business, you're selling the lipstick, not the marketer, not the Photoshopper. You're selling the mascara, not the marketer. You're selling the product, not the person sitting behind the computer shaving down cheekbones. And that's what we as Thai government want to argue. You're selling the product, not the Photoshop. Thank you.
I now call upon the first member of the opposition, who shall speak for a total of 7 minutes, the first and last of which will be protected.
The government presented us here today with the resolution, be it resolved that cosmetic companies be prohibited from using Photoshop in advertisements. Now, we as side opposition realize today that this bill is ultimately flawed. The first thing I'm going to talk about here today is really what the umbrella issue is with this bill today. I'm going to go into clashing what the Prime Minister presented, and then I'm going to build up our own 3 points. So first, what is the umbrella cause here today? What is the umbrella question? We want to ask, why just cosmetic companies? This is a flaw within the whole industry. And something that the Prime Minister didn't present so far, or that the government hasn't presented so far, is what merits just doing this to the cosmetic industry. Why should we regulate them, and why should we ban them, and not the rest of the advertising industry? And that's something that we have failed to see here today. So, to go into the clash of the Prime Minister's opening. First of all, we didn't really see a model at all on how this is going to be implemented. And we think that's really important to know how this is going to happen, because if we can see how this is going to be done and what measures are going to be taken, it's better to understand what depth this case has and how far this bill is going to go, and really see the tangible results that are going to be presented here today. So, next he talked about their 3 points. So he went into his first point and said, where do we want to go as a society? And I think this is a great question, because we know as a society, and the reason that we're having this problem with false advertising is because as a society we seek fantasy, and we seek the adventure, and we seek another life, and this is nothing that we disagree with. Everyone looks for the beauty, and they desire all sorts of things. And yeah, one of the things that most men and women desire is to look beautiful in the eyes of society. But we aren't arguing this. We don't disagree that as a society we want to bring ourselves to a place where this isn't an issue. But we don't believe that by hurting the cosmetics industry, this is going to do it. We believe that if we want to have a holistic solution, there's a much better approach to do so. And this is only going to be a band-aid that is going to just hurt the cosmetics industry. So moving on, he talked about how perfection is insellable and how it can't be sold. And we don't disagree with this. But once again, it goes back to the idea that how can we really take a measure to benefit from this other than hurting one industry? How can we holistically take a measure to deal with this? how can we benefit the Canadian citizens? And then he talked about changing yourself to become an impossible shape and beauty. And this is something that's huge because think about fashion industry. Being an impossible shape is something that's massive there, and altering the cosmetics advertisements isn't going to fix this. This is just a Band-Aid. We need to find a way, if this is a problem for Canadians, and this is a problem, and something we don't want to see in our society, we need to fix this in another way. We need to fix this holistically. Because it's obvious in the modeling industry that we see all these shapes, I'll take you in a second. We see all these shapes and all these models who are presenting what a beautiful body should look like, but the cosmetics industry isn't going to start helping that by hurting that. Yeah?
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. It kind of feels, don't you agree that it kind of feels like you missed out on our site government's definition of advertisement, as we define it as any paid for media with the express purpose of selling a product? We did not expressly say cosmetic industry. We said Photoshop, prohibited in Photoshop advertisements, and we define advertisements as any paid media.
Thank you for your question. But today we are talking about cosmetics. That is in the resolution. Regardless of how we define advertisements, we are talking about cosmetics. And so that is the industry that we are talking about, and that is what we are going to be discussing here today. So with that clash done, I want to bring forward our points today. So our first point is, which I've talked about lots, is why just the cosmetic companies? Because we believe this is the nature of advertising. Our second point is it's only going to hurt the industry. And this is something we want to see, as we want Canadian industries to be thriving and to be bountiful and to be the best on a global scale. And third, we want to talk about what is the point of cosmetics, and how that inherently is exactly what we're trying to fight here today if we're neglecting the advertisements. So I'm going to build off the first point, which I have in my clash already, is why just cosmetics companies? So let's look at the food industry, for example. Now, this is a huge issue in the food industry as well. When you're driving down the highway and you see a billboard, and you see a big McDonald's burger, is that how it looks when you go down and sit in McDonald's? No, it's not. And this is across the board in the advertising industry. This is false advertising, and it's not going to be solved by just hitting the cosmetics industry. This is the nature of advertising. This is what industry is. That's the foundation of advertising. And the opposition fails to see the merit in harming just the cosmetics industry here today. So moving forth, we see this in all sorts of industries. My colleagues will present more examples that we've really come up that are going to present that across the board in advertising, this is an issue, and it's not going to be fixed by harming one industry. The 3 points that the government brought up here today are all things we agree with. We do believe that society should be ethical. We do believe that businesses should be ethical. I'll take you a second. But we do believe it should be holistic.
Would you not agree, as side opposition, that it is our job as representatives of the Canadian people to make sure that their interests are best protected, which includes making sure that they have the right idea of what beauty really is and not have a false sense of advertising?
Yes, thank you for your question. I agree with that fully. I think it's great. And like I said, we don't disagree that this is an issue of society, but that doesn't mean that we should approach one part of it and just throw a Band-Aid on top. That means that we should heal the issue. That means that we should solve it across the board and take a step forward to do that, because we as opposition don't see how this is going to really fix this inherent problem. So what have I told you here today? Today I have talked about the Prime Minister's opening and how their case is ultimately flawed and how they aren't seeing the root problem that we are talking about here today. I presented to you our 3 points: why just cosmetic companies, how it's going to hurt the industry, and what the point of cosmetics actually is. Like I said, we don't, as the opposition, aren't seeing how we're tackling the root problem here today. And unless side government can bring forth more substance as to how cosmetic industry specifically will attack this societal problem, we fail to see how this bill will pass today. Thank you for your time.
And I'll call upon the second member of government, who shall speak for a total of 7 minutes, the first and last of which is protected time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, as side opposition has pointed out some interesting arguments or apparent flaws in side government's case, I just would like to kind of refute and rebut some of these issues. So one of the things that side opposition really wants to point out is what's the root issue? What's the umbrella issue? What are we talking about? And as the resolution points out, we're talking about the cosmetic industry. And why is this an issue right now? Is because this issue is altering human beings and essentially altering the image that is proposed rather than the product. Right now, we're talking about product. We're talking about ethical marketing principles. And as humans are being altered to fit a product's name, how does this propose? How does that help anyone? And as side government, we see this as a direct issue correlating towards self-worth and the Canadian population, and we think it's something that is of the utmost importance. And that's what we're discussing here today, Mr. Speaker. So we also want to talk about, or the side opposition brought up, how the elimination or alteration of human photos. And we just want to point out again our definitions that we're talking about human photos as the thing that, as a main point. We're not talking about, cars. We're not talking about objects. We're talking about people being altered to fit this position. And side opposition also brought up another point. We want to seek adventure. We want to try new things in our advertising. This is what it's all about. Yes, that's what we're advocating in advertising. We're not saying shut down all these other things, do all this other stuff. No, we're just saying, do we want society to meet unrealistic standards that are literally put forward by a computer? And the answer is no, that is not what we're all about. Yes?
Mr. Speaker, could the government please justify why they think the government should be laying down what each individual citizen should consider beautiful?
We're not saying what should be beautiful, we're saying what should not be altered. We're talking about marketing ethics here, and this is what the standard issue is, and that's what I just outlined previously. We're talking about why should something be altered, why should a marketing principle be changed to something that is false, essentially, instead of going what we're talking about. We're not talking about altering a product, we're talking about altering what the product is on, and fundamentally, side government sees this as wrong. So, as this has been pointed out, some of the most obvious flaws inside opposition speech, I want to begin by proposing some of our own points. And this pillar that I'm going to be talking about is the ethics of advertising. So essentially, what are we talking about, okay? So, the first point I want to make is that we are surrounded by advertising. Marketing is an essential part of our society today. We are constantly being bombarded by an array of so many images, so many words, so many ideas of purchase this product, do this, do that, come here, grab a bite to eat, whatever the case may be, right? And so what we want to say is that we're essentially talking about a product there. We're talking about, as cosmetic companies, we're talking about mascara, we're talking about blush, we're talking about actual products that are used applying to women, not necessarily the supermodel that is wearing this product, not necessarily the actress that is wearing this product, not necessarily a normal person wearing the product. And so what we want to come down to today, Mr. Speaker, is essentially some of the companies that have actually started to advocate for ethical and true marketing principles in terms of women in Photoshop. And then we also want to outline some examples of how we really are emphasizing the product. So one of these examples is a Dove commercial. I'm sure many of you have seen it, where a woman stands on stage and you can see half of her face being transformed into this, using Photoshop at the end, using makeup and all this stuff, making her look beautiful, and then all of a sudden at the end there's Photoshop, and her eyes are being expanded, her jawline is being changed, her body is being altered. And the makeup and the products that are going on beforehand to use that are perfectly okay, but then why does she have to be altered? Why do her eyes have to be made bigger? Why does this have to change? And this is something that we're advocating for against in side government. There's also been a recent issue of Vogue. Vogue has stopped using Photoshop in their covers. This has been an unprecedented standard of change for the marketing industry in saying, we want our clothes, we want our beauty to be represented of true women as they look wearing our product, not necessarily a changed view, and that's essentially what we're arguing. There's another example here of supermodels, okay?